Holland doesn't want to change. And sometimes I say to my friend, Holland doesn't want to change because Holland is a big, fat, rich country. And people are spoiled. People don't have to change. People don't have to wake up. Thank you.
First question, what is your name? What is your occupation? And where are you from?
My name is Joy Wielkens. I'm an actress, I'm a singer, I'm a theater performer, and I'm from Amsterdam, actually. Yeah.
How would you culturally define yourself or racially define yourself?
I think I am a typical, as if that exists. I'm a Dutchie with Caribbean roots. Yeah, so I was raised the Caribbean way. My mother is from Suriname. My father is from the island of Curacao. But I was born and raised in this city.
When I talked to Bless, he's a poet and spoken word artist. He mentioned that he's from Amsterdam, and he was very clear about that. Do you think that there's something very specific about Amsterdam that you can't mention about the other parts of the country?
Well, to me, there's something specific about Amsterdam because I don't really identify with the rest of Holland. I think Amsterdam is a specific place that I know and where I feel, in a sense, free and liberated. And I don't feel that as much in different other parts of the country. I don't know these other parts as well. That might also be the Amsterdam arrogance that we're not really interested in the rest of the country, but I see the country as the rest of the country, and then there's Amsterdam, and I'm from Amsterdam.
In terms of your career, would you say that your cultural heritage has had an impact in it in any way?
Definitely, it always has an impact, or it always plays a role, or it is always a factor in the roles that I get, or the stories I like to tell, or the stories people want to tell with me, the chances I've been given, the schools I went to. It always matters. The way I look, where I'm from, the way I speak, yeah, what I represent, whatever that may be.
And in what way do you feel that it's affected you or informed your work?
In millions of ways. It affected me in a sense that I'm a black actress in a white film and theater industry. So in the beginning of my career, I got a lot of, this is just a story we all know, a lot of roles as prostitutes, as domestic workers, as roles without any names. I mean, I've been to the University of Theater, I don't know, the theater school, which is a high degree of education when it comes to theater performer. I'm a little too good to be a tiny little role in your story, in your white story, where you have the idea that you have to do something with diversity. So you'll make me into a domestic worker or a prostitute to put a little color in your story. So in the beginning of my career, I had a lot of that. And I changed that. My mentality about that changed after a while. And I started to connect with projects and makers that were a little bit more interested in me and what I had to say as a black woman instead of what they thought a black woman was in the world or in the industry. So that's one of these things that is always major. People will always see that I'm black. When they give me a role, they always have the feeling that they have to say something about the way I look. Most of the time it has to be something problematic. While the sense that I'm a full-blown woman with all the emotions that Linda or whatever Caucasian woman has as well is still a mystery, I guess, to a lot of people who actually create what we see every day on film, what we see on TV, even what we see in theater. I mean, theater in Holland is so white. There's hardly any space for a different perspective or a different story. So it's an everyday battle. I wouldn't say it's a struggle every day, but it's something that you always encounter. You never do a project and it's not mentioned, or it's never thought of like, oh, we're gonna set up a cast for a TV series, and then she's black, but do we have to do that because she's black? It has consequences, because if she's gonna have children, then it has to be black children, or and then if she's gonna have a partner or a love interest in this TV series, does it have to be a white man or a black man? What are we telling if it's a black man? So it's always all these questions. It's never we like her because she's great and she's good, but there's always this extra aspect of, but she is a black woman, and what do we say if we hire a black woman? Well, you say that black people exist too in this world, and you it would be nice if you would feel the need to tell their stories, but if you're not going to do it, we'll do it. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. Actually, that's one of the lines I've used in my project proposals. Like, if we don't promote ourselves and tell our stories, who will? We just
Nobody.
do it. Like,
Yeah.
it's actually nobody's responsibility. But the interesting thing that Jazz mentioned was that now in the Netherlands you have a quota system on the public television projects. That's very interesting. So they have to have a certain amount in front of camera, also behind camera.
I don't know behind the camera.
Right.
I wish it was also behind the camera, but I know at least in front of the camera.
Can you describe that policy and explain it?
I don't know the policy that well, but I think it's the same as what they called back in the days positive racism. I think they need to have a quota, a certain amount of people of color in their series to be visible, so that the public has a feeling that it's a representation of our society. I'm not really sure how well that quotum is
implemented.
Exactly, and even what it exactly means. If it means that there should be lead roles for black actors, or only black actors in general, so they can also just come up one time, give a letter, and leave. I don't know if it means that even writers or exactly directors or whatever is implanted in the whole project and the making of this film or TV series. So I don't know much about it. The only feeling I get when I hear about these quotums is that it's always sort of a double-sided sword. I don't know.
Yeah, I understand.
In a sense, it's necessary because otherwise people just don't care. It's not on their agenda. They don't have to change because for them the world is great. So it's good that these laws and rules are there. And on the other hand, it's painful that people don't necessarily and just by heart feel the need to tell different stories and realize that when they walk out on the street here in Amsterdam, that the streets and the people they meet look so different from what they, in a sense, want to make when they make fiction or theater even. It's so weird. It's like...
Yeah, it's cognitive dissonance. Like you have two realities that kind of work together.
Yeah, it's like when they want to create that fantasy, then all of a sudden it's a total white fantasy with only white characters in it. While when they have to describe who their neighbors are and who they meet on the street every day, it's a colorful picture. It's, yeah.
I wanted to ask you about the first time you felt different. I can talk about myself, like studying in England. I went at 12, so I'd already had quite a bit of time in Africa to like be part of like the norm. And then suddenly be called black for me was an interesting one because it's not that I didn't identify as black. Obviously I was, but it was just a weird way to describe somebody.
Yeah.
Like maybe the woman with braids or, but yeah, so was there a moment in your life, because you've been born here, right?
Yeah.
So was there a time when you're growing up where you thought, wow, they see me as different? Or has it always been the case that you're aware of that?
I think I've always been sort of different because besides that I'm black, I also have the sort of stigma that I was raised only by my mom. So from a single mom family with my sister, we weren't very not fortunate, but we didn't have a lot of money. We lived in a suburb that had high crime rate. So all of that made me already different. I think from already pretty young, I knew that this wasn't what I was seeing on TV. This la-di-da-di-da wasn't my world. I mean, it wasn't sad or anything, but just our house didn't look like it looked on TV. My family situation looked different. And the fact that I was black, the majority of the people in my area were Moroccan and Turkish, so we definitely looked different. And then I think the first time I felt very different was when I maybe went to theater school for youth. I think I was 8. And people asked me if I was adopted. And they asked me if I was adopted because I spoke Dutch so well. and they were sort of surprised, and I couldn't imagine that I would be raised by black people. I think 8, and I was so offended by the fact that they thought I was adopted, because I thought, I'm definitely not adopted. My mom is raising me and my sister by herself. So I think that's the first time that I realized that people didn't really knew what to do with me, and that felt foreign and strange. Yeah, because I was cool with who I was. And then later on, I went to very white school. So you are different. I went into theater. I was the only black kid most of the time. Most of the time. So I have felt different the first 15 years of my life, definitely. Yeah.
And so when you say 15, was there a turning point?
Yeah, I was thinking about this on the way to this interview, because I wasn't always very conscious of my blackness. I wasn't even contributing to the struggle or anything. And that changed when I was, I think, 26 or 27. And I always wondered what the reason for that was. Why I don't even speak my own languages. I don't speak Papiamento. I don't speak Sranangtongo. I don't know a lot about Surinamese culture. And I thought, why is that? And why did it change? And I think in the beginning of my life, it might sound a little sad, but there wasn't a lot of space to actually be in the struggle. So my mom was hardly ever home. Me and my sister were home alone very often. At a certain point in my life, my sister didn't live at our place either. I was home alone a lot. And I think there just wasn't enough space for me. I just thought that I was in some mode of survival. Like, I just have to get out of this area where I live, have to make sure I get into a good school. And after that, I will sort of sum up what life has to offer. But first of all, we're in survival mode, and we have to make sure we make it out alive.
Please like and subscribe. Shout at Hues Films.